blowing my nose, which you guys didn't. I was sparing you.
Well, thank you.
Wait,
Yeah.
that was me being. Was that me being image conscious?
Or, just not obnoxious. Take your pick.
I know.
And that's the thing. It's like with these types, it's like, especially when you're trying to isolate what they would look like, you start ignoring like how like all 9 points would manifest in a person.
Yeah, well, it was basically like I show too much 3 to be an 8 prime, and also I'm not I'm not basically assholey enough all the time, and don't have a big enough temper to be an 8 was also part of the theory, I
You
believe.
that might be, I don't know, that might be due to the stacking, but I'm not really sure. Like I know Taylor, sort of types himself as self-pres sexual with social blind spot. I suppose I could probably see that, although I don't know if he has any sort of shame in the area of not being socially minded enough. And I don't mean social, like talking to people. It's a bit different. What was it? So yeah, I don't know if stacking were to play a part in that. It might be. Do you think you could be like an 8-3-7, like 3-4-7?
I mean, I personally like identify with the 7 a lot more than the 3, and I am a little bit late. Honestly, it makes sense that I think Taylor's got the 3 up there.
Yeah.
I think he's got the 3 in the middle because I've done some reading and then my own kind of personal theorizing about it. But I'm lazier than Taylor in a lot, at least.
Yeah, if they're saying that 8s wouldn't keep trophies, I count Taylor's memorabilia as trophies, but also jewelry.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things. Taylor wasn't in a thing that acquired trophies. Like, I don't really, because those things like I got into martial arts when I was really young, so probably one of the reasons I'm got into less fights and not in this much trouble. But
Right.
so I got trophies, but I don't know that I don't feel like I was always after the trophies.
Uh-huh.
But if you're good at a thing and you're in a system that gives you trophies, you will acquire trophies.
Yeah. Especially if you have the mindset of like, oh, those trophies, only the people who win can get those. So if I acquire this, that means I'm the winner. And so it's like,
right. But it wasn't the acquired. It's like, I'm the winner, so give me a trophy. But it's it's backwards. That was the thing. Is they're like supposedly the 3 would be seeking the achievement or the win, and I'm like, rather than maybe experiencing.
They just handed you like a trophy.
Yeah, contradict is like maybe I think I seek the experience of the win more than the maybe external. I think it's the win is more internal for me than it is external. If that makes sense. And for a 3, I think it's going to be more the outside. I think. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm gonna try looking at something.
What are we looking at?
I was gonna try to look at the self-pres social, and you type 8. So I've read a lot on the 9. Haven't really read. So immediately what I'm reading here at the bottom, the type 8 self-pres social, this type has a tendency to see relationships as somehow, quote unquote, getting in the way. While they may desire a close romantic relationship, they don't want it if it is at the expense of their self-pres needs. They can appear 5-like in this way, as they're concerned about the demands of a relationship or the demands a relationship might make on their time.
That doesn't sound familiar at all.
Self-pres social 8s are very self-reliant. they are frequently entrepreneurial. The self-preservational instinct combines with the social to make a subtype that's very focused on the external environment. Self-pres social 8s are the least dramatic of the 8. So there's that. They are no-nonsense types. They can be introverted, especially with the 9 wing when it's dominant, but even though they are often quiet, they're very much in control of themselves and of the direction in life. On the high side, they make great business owners. They show a sense of fairness and have an instinctual drive to do what needs to be done. They know how to make decisions and aren't afraid to implement them. Because the sexual instinct is last, they can sometimes be seen as difficult to warm up to. They can be seen as all business.
Interesting. That's a good description. I don't know where you got that, but I don't think I've read that one.
They had pulled that information from elsewhere, but that's just the current place that I found it. You'd have to scroll all the way down to Enneatype 8. Yeah, that self-pres social for the 8 sounds a lot more competent in some ways than like the self-pres social for the 9. I'm not sure if I'm self-pres social or social self-pres, but it's like self-pres social. This subtype is the most self-effacing of type 9. Possibly the least assertive of all the Enneagram types. I was like, damn, just shoot me in the gut, why don't you? I just do think that's funny how it's like even within the instincts, it's like you have self-pres social 8, and it's like, you know, you're talking like entrepreneurial, you're talking, you know, like a no-nonsense mindset, different things like that. It's like even with the 8, I mean, like even with the sort of muted qualities of the self-pres social, even in the 8, there's still enough drive there, whereas in the 9, it's like, you know, it's talking about like a lack of assertion. Self-preservation social 9, while they do desire attention and recognition with a sexual instinct last, they seldom actively pursue it. One thing I thought is interesting is that the subtype is usually very deliberate and methodical in their speech. I would say that depends. They're therefore very short and concise with their communication. Not always. Not wanting to provoke any confrontation, although I get that. But when given a chance and the time to express themselves, they can be quite talkative. No.
Yeah, it's amazing how different they are. I do find it interesting that like some types, like depending on your description, like some of them will be described in a lot more positive context than others. Even though there are negatives to everyone, but some of them, I don't know, seem to. I don't think people probably notice they do it, but there's some kind of bias in there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, I think you can avoid that somewhat, but at the end of the day, I think in a lot of ways, self-preservation kind of wins. And I mean like more at a basic level, and I don't mean just any self-preservation. I'd say more type 8 or maybe even like type 3 or something like that. Maybe even type 5. But it's just with the 9, I think you can only show so much love there because until somebody actually gets into the habit of getting done what needs to get done, it's hard to just throw endless praise their direction.
Right.
Because there's no matter how much you
totally encouraging them by, you know.
Yeah. I mean, no matter how much you sugarcoat it, there's. Yeah.
I've noticed, I was just talking about like negatives, like on YouTube, whenever you watch a video about type 8s, like there's at least one person that just says in the comments, they're like, all you need to know about type 8s is that they're like angry, evil assholes, basically.
Yeah.
Inevitably, it's just like, okay.
Well, it's like that one video I was talking about where David Favre was describing the type 8s as like the psychological adults of the Enneagram. There were people that weren't thrilled about that because they're like some of the worst people I know are 8s. It's like definitely with types. There's I mean, you can get whatever. It's entirely dependent on the person.
Yeah.
I
just
imagine
find it
that.
amusing.
Yeah, I imagine that abusive 8s would like using their assertion or possibly their authority if they get it to abuse people. However, I think that's probably going to be true of many other types. Like I imagine if a type 9 were a dick and they were get into a position of power, they might try to use that against people, but much more subversively and much more quietly.
Yeah, well, I don't, just I think that probably 8s are less likely to properly abuse their power as people think. I think that counterphobic 6 and some other stuff probably makes up
Right.
for throw
Yeah.
kind of muddies the water in there too.
Yeah. Because I do think that there's, again, it's like I know that all types get considered equal in some ways, and I would agree with that, and that they're different forms of sort of human manifestation,
Right.
and they're all obviously valid ways to exist, and by valid ways to exist I mean people exist as them, so it's an issue of being self-evident. It's like
Right.
But I think that there are obviously preferable behaviors that are more typical of particular types. Like with the type 8s, like part of the reason why, even though I don't particularly like it in a certain way, like Eric arguing about like Islam or different stuff like that recently, like things will get said that I'm like I'm almost cringing and like covering my eyes, like even though I'm listening to it, I'm still like doing this blocking motion, because it's like the confrontation bothers me to a certain extent, and yet I've learned to value that things need, like, you need to blow off steam. And I think when there's a consistent mindset of, oh no, let's not raise our voices, I'm like, I've been doing that pretty much the majority of my life, and it bottles up too much. You need a release. And I think the more 8ish nature can be a bit more healthy in that respect, because I don't think many 8s are going to have the feeling of having bottled things up, at least not for an extended period of time.
Yeah, well, just the idea of just you're talking about like avoiding the conflict and the intent, that's interesting to me.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure, the more specific differences between 8 and 9. But I know one big mindset difference is the 8s obviously think that it's up to them to get a handle on some of the shit that they see going on. If there's a problem, that they're like, oh, well, then I better deal with that, or something like that. Whereas with the 9, it's born more from having a sense that your contributions won't matter in the end, or that like it comes from a place of feeling powerless, I think.
Interesting, because it's interesting because I don't relate to the, like I said, what you're describing sounds pretty kind of instinctual avoidance of it, which is like I said, is very interesting to me.
Uh-huh.
And I know it's something I've observed in like students and things, and it's interesting to talk about it, because like I can step away from a fight or a conflict, but that's never really the first instinct. That's if you want to look at it on the Enneagram, that's probably me taking a step over to 5 and going, yeah, this isn't useful to me. So
yeah. What else would? Oh right, yeah, 2, 5, and 2. That's what